In the bustling city of Lagos, right in the heart of the markets, there was a woman named Elizabeth, but everyone called her Lizzie the Lazy. Lizzie was known for her beauty, her sharp tongue, and most of all, her laziness. She had a shop selling women's fabrics, laces, and Ankara cloths, but it was more of a place to sit and gossip than a business. Lizzie's home, a modest bungalow in Surulere, was a reflection of her personality. The kitchen was always half-cleaned, the bed unmade, and her wardrobe a mess of colorful fabrics and unpaired shoes. If cleanliness were wealth, Lizzie would have been the poorest in all of Lagos. Her husband, Robert, a civil servant with the Ministry of Works, was the complete opposite. He was hard-working and always tried to push Lizzie to take her business seriously. But Lizzie had a proverb for everything. "Robert," she would say, lounging on the sofa with a fan in her hand, "what is the need to run when the tortoise always gets to the finish line, eh?" Robert, already tired from work, would shake his head and mutter, "The tortoise at least moves, Lizzie. You're like a stone in the river. You don't even float, let alone move." Her shop was her domain, but not for selling fabrics. If you passed by around 10 a.m., you would find Lizzie just opening the doors, moving slowly like a snail on a hot day. The other shop owners would have already started their day, calling customers, haggling prices, and working with energy that could light up a small village. But not Lizzie. She would sit under the shade of her shop's canopy, yawning and waving at the passers-by, waiting for customers to come to her. Of course, they rarely did. Her best friend, Grace, who had a shop selling shoes nearby, often visited her during these lazy moments. "Lizzie," Grace would shout, walking into the shop. "You should have seen the new customer I had today. A government official's wife, and she bought everything. You know they are talking about the government giving out contracts to small businesses now, don't you?" Lizzie, barely opening her eyes, would respond, "Anne? Government contracts? Grace, leave that one. What is meant for me will find me. I don't need to chase anything. Abby, doesn't the wind blow the palm leaves whether or not they are ready?" Grace would shake her head in disbelief. "Lizzie, one day you will miss something big O. A snake that does not move will never catch its prey." But Lizzie would shrug and change the topic. "Ah, leave that talk. Have you heard what happened to Mrs. Benson's daughter?" The gossip that followed would last hours, sometimes stretching into the afternoon, with Lizzie barely selling a single piece of fabric. When the sun set, she would pack up, head home, and complain to Robert about how the market is dry these days. Robert knew better than to argue with her. "Lizzie," he would say, "you can't wait for the rain, and then complain about the mud. You have to work if you want to see results." But Lizzie would just laugh and wave him off. One evening, while Lizzie was lounging at home after another uneventful day, Robert came back with some exciting news. "Lizzie, do you know the government is giving out business grants to traders? This could be your chance to finally make something of that shop." Lizzie rolled her eyes. "Government grant? What do I need that for? If it's my destiny, it will come to me. Why should I go and hustle for it? You know the saying, the one who fetches water for the lazy still has to drink from the same pot. Lizzie, this isn't about fetching water. It's about securing your future. Imagine expanding your shop, employing people, making a name for yourself in the market." "Robert, Robert, Robert," Lizzie mocked him, shaking her head. "You're always running up and down like an ant under the sun. Me, I know my God. What is mine will come to me." Robert sighed, his shoulders slumping as he realized there was no use arguing. As far as Lizzie was concerned, life was a series of events that would happen to her without any effort on her part. Little did she know she was about to miss the biggest opportunity of her life. One fateful Monday, Lizzie's laziness finally caught up with her in a spectacular way. Early that morning, the entire market was buzzing. Grace had heard from her sister's friend's uncle, who worked at the Ministry of Trade, that a government official would be visiting the market to inspect small businesses eligible for the grant. It was the opportunity Lizzie had been told about multiple times, but like every other piece of good advice, she had let it float over her head like a lazy breeze. While everyone else was preparing, Lizzie was, as usual, running late. She arrived at her shop at noon, just as the government convoy was about to leave. "Lizzie, what are you doing?" Grace cried, running over to her. "The officials are here. They are checking the shops. If they like your business, you could get a grant, maybe even a contract. Lizzie blinked lazily, stretching her arms. Grace, please relax. There's no need to rush. You know what they say? The river that rushes too fast will not catch the fish. I'll meet them when it's my time. Desiree. Grace stared at her in disbelief. Lizzie, this is not the time for proverbs. They are leaving. Come on, go and talk to them. Reluctantly, Lizzie pulled herself from her chair and strolled over towards the convoy, but she was too late. The officials were already driving off. Well, Lizzie said, shrugging as if it was no big deal. If it's meant for me, another opportunity will come. No need to worry. Grace was speechless. She watched as Lizzie turned back to her shop as completely unbothered. Lizzie, you've missed your chance. Do you know how much that grant could have helped you? Lizzie waved her off. Grace, don't be dramatic. Life will go on. We will still eat tonight, won't we? I trust my destiny. Whether I chase or I sit, what is mine will always come to me. As Lizzie sat back down in her shop, not realizing the life-changing opportunity she had just let slip through her fingers, Grace shook her head in frustration. Lazy Lizzie, you will learn the hard way one day, she muttered under her breath. And indeed, that day was coming sooner than Lizzie expected. Weeks passed after Lizzie missed the government convoy, and though she remained her usual lazy self, the market was changing rapidly around her. Grace, always the smart one, had secured a small grant and expanded her shoe shop. Her customers grew, her profits soared, and soon enough, she was the talk of the market. Lizzie, you need to take your business seriously, Grace said one afternoon as she strolled into Lizzie's half-empty shop. Look at me. My shop is full of new designs now, and I'm even thinking of opening a second one in Ikeja. Lizzie yawned, reclining on her wooden chair as if the day had already worn her out. Grace, my friend, you are the early bird catching all the worms. Me, I prefer to wait until the worms come out by themselves. I don't need to scatter the ground to find what is mine. After all, when a tree bears fruit, even the wind can't take it away. Grace sighed heavily. Lizzie, have you ever heard of a lazy farmer having a good harvest? You can't expect the fruits to fall without shaking the tree first. Grace, leave this matter, Lizzie said, lazily swatting the air. We will all eat from the same pot in the end. No matter how much you hustle, my stomach will not lack food. But the winds of change were blowing harder than Lizzie realized. Business in the market was becoming more competitive. The traders who received grants or contracts were growing faster, and their shops became busy hubs of activity. Lizzie's shop, however, remained a quiet, forgotten corner. Then, one day, disaster struck. It was a Friday morning, and the market was buzzing with traders and customers as usual. Lizzie arrived late, strolling into her shop after the sun was already high in the sky. She didn't notice the whispers around her, nor the strange looks from the other shop owners. Grace, what's all this commotion about? She asked as she dragged her feet into her shop. Grace, who was busy attending to customers, barely looked up. Lizzie, you didn't hear? The government just announced they're buying up land for a new development project. They're going to build a big shopping complex, and all the small businesses here have been offered to move into the complex with reduced rent. Lizzie blinked slowly, trying to process the information. Shopping complex? Reduced rent? Yes, Grace exclaimed, still distracted by the flurry of activity in her own shop. It's a huge opportunity. Everyone is talking about it. They are offering grants and contracts to the traders who are part of the project. For a brief moment, Lizzie stood there, a flicker of urgency passing through her mind. But then she sat down, fanning herself lazily. Grace, this is not the end of the world. These things come and go. My shop will be fine where it is. The wind might blow, but the tree stays rooted. I don't need to chase after every gust. Grace stopped what she was doing and looked directly at Lizzie. Lizzie, this is not the wind. This is a storm. If you don't move now, your shop will be left behind. You won't have customers anymore. Everyone is preparing to move. You have to apply for this now, or be left in the dust. Lizzie waved her hand dismissively. Grace, you know me. My shop is enough for me. I can't kill myself for a complex I don't even know will succeed. Grace shook her head in frustration. Lizzie, I don't know what to say to you anymore. You're sitting in a sinking boat, and you're refusing to swim. A week later, the development project was in full swing. The government was holding meetings with traders explaining how they could expand their businesses in the new complex. Grace, along with many others, had already submitted their applications and were eagerly waiting for their approvals. Lizzie, on the other hand, still sat in her little shop, unbothered and unhurried. As far as she was concerned, the market would never change. She believed that customers would always come to her because, after all, people would always need fabric, right? But the reality was harsher than she expected. One afternoon, as she lazily waved her fan back and forth, she noticed fewer and fewer people walking through the market. Grace's shop, which used to be bustling with activity, was now closed. The traders around her were packing up and moving to the new complex. Lizzie couldn't understand what was happening. "Grace!" Lizzie called out when she saw her friend passing by with a cart full of shoes. "What is going on? Why is everyone leaving?" Grace stopped and looked at Lizzie with a mixture of pity and disbelief. "Lizzie, where have you been? We're all moving to the new complex. The market is shutting down. The government has already given us notices to vacate. Didn't you get one?" Lizzie froze, her fan falling from her hand. "Notice to vacate? No, I didn't get anything." Grace sighed, her voice softening. "Lizzie, they've been giving out notices for weeks now. You were probably not paying attention. I told you about this, about the contracts and the grants, but you didn't listen." For the first time in a long time, Lizzie felt a pang of panic. "Grace, what am I supposed to do now? I didn't apply for anything. My shop. Where will I go?" Grace shook her head. "Lizzie, it's too late now. The applications are closed. They've given all the grants and contracts to the traders who were ready. I'm moving my shop tomorrow. Everyone else is too." Lizzie stood there, her mouth open in shock. The reality of her laziness finally hit her like a crashing wave. While she had been lounging, fanning herself, and spouting proverbs, everyone else had been preparing for the future. Now that future was here, and Lizzie was left behind. "Grace, help me. What should I do now?" Grace looked at her friend, sympathy in her eyes. "Lizzie, I've been trying to help you for years, but you never listened. A horse that refuses to drink when led to water will surely thirst when the well runs dry." Lizzie sank back into her chair, her mind spinning. The shop she had taken for granted, the customers she had assumed would always come, everything was gone. And all because she had believed that fate would hand her success without effort. For the first time, Lizzie realized that proverbs and laziness would not carry her through life. She had missed her chance, and now the market had moved on without her. The following weeks were some of the hardest of Lizzie's life. The market was almost empty now, and the traders who remained were struggling to keep their businesses afloat. Lizzie's shop, once a place of idle gossip and long naps, became a silent reminder of what she had lost. Every morning she would open her shop, hoping for a miracle, but no customers came. They were all flocking to the new complex, where the shops were modern, spacious, and filled with fresh stock. Lizzie had no choice but to sell her remaining fabrics at a loss just to keep herself afloat. The money trickled in slowly, but it was nothing compared to what she could have had if she had applied for the government grant. One evening, as she sat outside her now empty shop, Robert came by to check on her. "Lizzie," he said gently, sitting beside her. "You look tired." Lizzie nodded, her once sharp tongue now dulled by regret. "Robert, I've been a fool." Robert patted her shoulder. "You were always waiting for the rain, Lizzie, but you forgot that you have to plant the seeds first." She sighed deeply, looking out at the empty market. "I thought everything would come to me if I just waited. But now I see. What is meant for me won't come unless I go to meet it halfway." Robert smiled softly. "It's a hard lesson, but it's never too late to learn. Just remember, a lazy man watches the pot, but the one who stirs it enjoys the food." Lizzie looked up at him, nodding. "No more waiting. Next time, I'll stir the pot." And though the lesson came too late to save her shop, it wasn't too late for Lizzie to change her ways.